Sorry, I don't love you. Afraid I've grown accustomed to. Cause with you, something isn't wrong, something isn't wrong, something isn't right. I wish you could be happy.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is back, as is Tim Mathews. We are talking about Mission Impossible Fallout today. We have hit the 6th movie, finally. And, we've sort of been cranking these out pretty regularly here. We would do 2, have another episode in between, do 2 more. So, I hope you all have been enjoying these. I have certainly been enjoying watching the movies for the first time and rewatching a couple of them. Maybe I was still a little unclear on which ones I had actually watched before, but I definitely had not watched 4, 5, or 6. So I just saw this one in theaters here. But Tim, I know because this one is a lot more recent, you and I both forgot to take notes in the theater. So,
Yes.
We're going off of memory for a lot of this one here. And I apologize for any details we might miss for this one. But as usual, we're going to start off with some casting discussion because we have new people on this one. And they are some big names. You may have heard of Henry Cavill and Angela Bassett.
I think he's done a few things.
Yeah, they Superman. Who knows who that is?
Just a little character, little indie movie.
Yeah, Angela Bassett was in Black Panther too, so we got lots of superheroes in this one, guys.
I kept waiting for them to use their powers, and they never did.
I know, really, August Walker? That's not a new name for Clark Kent here.
I know, seriously. I mean, well, I don't. I was gonna make a joke, but that's kind of a Batman vs Superman spoiler. I don't know if anyone would get mad at me for that anyway, but I won't use it.
But I think, both Henry Cavill and Angela Bassett were great additions to this cast. One thing I did make note of when I got home from the theater, though, was I felt like Angela Bassett was a little underused as Erica Sloane. She is in this huge position of power. And, she kind of pulls that card at the beginning when we first see her and August Walker walk up and everything like that. And, I just kept wanting to see more of her. And we did see her here and there throughout the movie. And I think the ending when she showed up was nice. And we won't spoil the ending just yet, but we will be getting there. So consider yourself warned here. But to have so much of the cast again roll over for this movie and then to add these 2 people on top of it, it's just like, wow, how much money did they spend on this thing? Because even though Angela Bassett wasn't in it a ton, you can bet she got paid nicely for it.
Oh yeah, she definitely. I mean, she kills it in every scene she's in. And I definitely wouldn't have been mad to have more from her. There's something so authoritative and badass about everything she said, and she got a ton of great lines to just chew up scenery with. I mean, even in the beginning of her just saying, "You use a scalpel. I prefer a hammer." It's such a cool line, and the way she delivers it, you're like, oh, I'm kind of on her side, even though I want to be on Ethan's side because I've been with Ethan for the past 5 movies. But you're pretty cool, but also kind of scary.
Exactly. She is one of those characters too where you have to respect her just because of who she is in the movie. And with Henry Cavill's August Walker, that's a little different because he's sort of just like a spook.
Yeah.
And he obviously just does whatever she tells him to an extent. Again,
Mm-hmm.
we'll get into that a little more later. But it's one of those things where, like I said in the previous episode, Ethan doesn't trust anyone, no matter who they are. It could be the president and he wouldn't trust the president. So
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where he's very wary of these 2 people just barging in and sort of mixing everything up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Here they are ready, ready to go, ready to take care of this mission. And then all of a sudden, he's got this CIA agent being forced upon him to go along with him, throwing a wrench into the plans, into the team, which, they have such a good rapport that, they flow and they work so well together. But now here's this additional person. It's like, how are our plans going to work out? Is this guy going to screw everything up? And he tries subtly to get rid of him a few times.
Just ever so subtly. That adds some comedy to the movie too, though, and I think, Henry Cavill as Superman was a little controversial. I think it was more so the writing than necessarily his performance. At least,
Yeah.
That's sort of my opinion on it. Is like, if the movie Man of Steel had been written better, it would probably be better. So,
No, I agree. Like because we've seen a little bit. I mean, a little bit in that movie. And then when he finally gets to be like his Superman self in Justice League, you're kind of like, why can't we? Like, he is really, really good at being that Boy Scout, and so it hopefully will be that. Hopefully, we'll get to see more of that at some point. But it is unfortunate to see. It's like, oh man, like he can pull that off really well. I wish we had that earlier. But then obviously his character in this is quite the juxtaposition to that role.
Exactly. And I just like that he seems to be able to do a little more with this role. We've mentioned how Jeremy Renner was able to ad-lib some stuff in previous movies, and I feel like stuff like that really helps the tone of the movie. And throughout this entire thing, you have this tension between Ethan and August, and that works so well with the two actors that they have in those roles. So it's one of those things where, maybe you don't end up liking August so much by the end of the movie, but Henry Cavill works really well in the role.
Absolutely. He's so awesome in this movie. And I mean, I had mentioned, before we recorded, I went and I saw it to watch it again for the podcast, because I hadn't seen it since it first came out. But I've seen it a total of 3 times, and the movie, it definitely still holds up after 3 times. It's still just as awesome, but the scenes with Henry Cavill are some of my favorites, because it's tough to do. I mean, because he's in a lot of scenes where he's up against Tom Cruise, but I feel like he even successfully steals scenes from Tom Cruise. But it's they kind of steal them back and forth from each other, and they're a really, really great pair. But the director and Tom Cruise were both very conscious of, they didn't want it to feel like the beginning of a beautiful friendship type thing. Like they wanted it to be this like antagonizing relationship that, while entertaining, you're not sitting there being like, I think they might become friends. And I think they do that. I think they do that really, really well. The way they kind of spar against each other with these just little like quick side remarks or anything like that. They're both just so great together in all their scenes.
Exactly. Well, why don't you go ahead and break down the story a little bit for us here, because you watched this more than once, so I feel more confident in your description of it than mine right now.
All right. So in the beginning, this movie is building off of Rogue Nation. One of the things that's very different with this film is it doesn't start with a massive action sequence, which is unusual for this series. So we're given a scene where, we're introduced through a haunting dream sequence that we see Ethan's former wife Julia and his fears of him not killing someone like Lane could have great consequences. But following that, we get the scene where he's provided with his mission in a very cool fashion, where he opens the door. And anytime I'm watching a spy movie, I love when they have the little dialogues, the call and response things, to know that they're delivering something to the right person. But in that message, we're introduced to the fact that while Lane was captured, his apostles, his followers, are being led by this mysterious man, John Lark, and they are continuing to carry out all the grand disasters and misdeeds of the syndicate. so that, you know, yeah, we caught the guy in charge, but they're still all going about, you know, doing bad things. And then that's the main like kickoff of the plot. And then so we have Ethan and his team. They are trying to acquire the plutonium that the syndicate is trying to also get. So they're trying to get the plutonium so that the syndicate doesn't have the plutonium. Naturally, things go wrong in that opening scene with the team. Luther almost gets killed. Thankfully does not, but naturally they lose the plutonium. And so now, because they've lost the plutonium, that's kind of what brings in Sloane and Henry Cavill, that it's Ethan and his team, they screwed up. And in her comments of saying, you guys are just a bunch of kids, you know, playing Halloween with your masks. You know, I'm sending in my guy to make sure that everything goes right.
That Halloween line was a great one too.
I
really loved it.
Yeah, because you're sitting there and you're just like, that's another one where you're like, well, I mean, she's kind of right. Like she's not wrong, but at the same time, they get things done in an impossible way. So that's the main crux of the story, is that this plutonium's out there, and naturally they want to find Lark. I don't recall how they figure it out, but probably in some spy way they figure out where Lark is going to be. And we get the amazing halo jump that is insane that Tom Cruise actually did. So they assume that they find Lark. Fantastic bathroom scene. That goes wrong. But in that going wrong, we get back one of our previous favorite characters, Ilsa, who is back with MI6. And her job is to kill Lane, because since Lane was a former MI6 agent, he knows way too much about MI6,
right?
And they can't afford to have him just being passed around to all these governments. So she's thrown into the mix, but Ethan ends up being roped into having to save Lane and have to keep him alive, because he's got to get the plutonium back. And through that, we're introduced to the broker, which is one of my favorite additions to this film.
Yeah.
Max from the first movie's daughter. And oh my gosh, she does such a good job playing her daughter. Like just all the little minute ways of how she says it.
Oh, so it is her daughter. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah. It is
good catch.
Yeah. She in her speech, she mentions her mother's name is Max. And then as Ethan's walking in, she kind of connects with locks eyes with Ethan,
right,
as she says she had a thing for paradoxes. And you can tell that Ethan is just like, this is a very familiar line, and there's something familiar about her. But I don't know if he ever necessarily puts them together, but there's just something about that. So they have a great back and forth together.
More than once too, which I think makes it work even better. And, you know, she's the White Widow. She's not directly a villain, but it's just one of those things where she's so in between. It's like, okay, what do we think of her this entire time? Yeah. Because obviously she's feeding information to the CIA, but then she's still getting to run her little crime ring, so to speak. You know, she's the go-between for all of these various criminals. And I think having her be in this, and, you know, I'm a little bummed I didn't catch on the Max thing. I think it was probably because I was so focused on everything else that was going on in the room that I kind of, you know, missed some of the words there, you know. And
remember, I have seen it 3 times, so it's
also true. And like I said, I forgot to take notes, so seeing it 3 times versus 1 time is probably better for the memory.
It's such a cool little Easter egg that then doesn't play like cheap fan service. Like it suits the story so well, and she's a great addition to it. I definitely would love to see her be a returning character, you know, even if for small parts in future movies. But yeah, she plays her own game. You know, it's whatever gets her what she wants and what she needs. And so, you know, the CIA obviously would probably try to take her down, but it's like, well, instead of doing that, how about I feed you some information and I keep doing my own thing and we all win. And as we've seen a lot in the previous movies and really in most espionage films, there's that gray area of, what's the right and moral decision, but also what's the right decision that we need to make in order to, get what we need, the greater good. The big thing with Ethan is that, and there's the great speech that Alec Baldwin gives, that he cares about the one life. And we're
Right.
introduced to that with, especially with the scene with Luther. And, the CIA, you have Sloane's viewpoint of it is, no, it's all about the bigger purpose. It's all about the bigger picture. If you have to sacrifice that one life, you have to do it. Ethan's not willing to do that. And that's something that Alec Baldwin's character Huntley, loves about him. And, I love the line where he says, I want you to prove me right. Coming over to the IMF was a lateral move. And he goes, some say a step down. It's,
Right.
Alec Baldwin has a lot of fun little quips in this one, and definitely more a part of the team since he was kind of roped into it at the end of Rogue One. But yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts in this movie, but at the same time, it's one of the more simplistic plots of the series as well. That it's they lost bombs. They got to get the bombs back, and they're trying to uncover who John Lark is, which, because that all goes wrong and the guy gets shot in the face by Ilsa, after Henry Cavill gets to reload his arms in the most awesome bathroom fight scene, which I'm not afraid to say, every time I saw it in theaters and every time I saw the trailer in theaters, when he would reload his arms, I would also do it. And it was a lot of fun. So I'd give a shout out to that trailer, because that's definitely one of the best trailers for a movie, in my opinion. But I guess Ethan has to assume the role of John Lark, which gives us that great scene with the White Widow. I keep wanting to say Black Widow, and that's not
White
it.
Widow. I know,
And,
it's hard not to want. It's hard to not say Black Widow, considering how many superheroes they put in here. So
yeah, and when their little escape scene is also a ton of fun, where they get this really great little fight sequence that almost plays like this dance, because they're trying to get out of there, and then like Ethan's fighting off one guy, but then she pulls out the knife, and then as he's holding someone, she's stabbing them, and then they almost get taken out by one guy, and then Ilsa comes and does her crazy leg kicks that she's really good at, and stops that gun, and then Ethan almost gets shot again, and then Walker shows up and whips his great hair and just stares right at the camera, and and from there, then Ethan's in deep at this point. He's brought back to the White Widow's home base, which is probably her home, a very, very nice home, and introduced to the fact that he now has to play this role to break out the one guy that he worked so hard to catch in the last movie, which really, really terrific sequence in this scene where they tell Ethan the plan, and then it goes into this very intense scene where the music is definitely at a higher level than the sound effects and the gunfire,
Right.
but the camera following Ethan, and we very clearly see Ethan's never firing a shot. He's following through, trying to play the role, but he's still Ethan. He's not going to kill the innocent life. And then he ends up having to turn and shoot the cop, and then everyone's standing around him, and he has to pull off the mask and shoot him, and then boom, revealed that didn't really happen. But I don't know about you, but when I saw the movie for the first time, I was there were a few moments in this movie that they did a really nice job in convincing me that they might be upping the stakes and taking us somewhere new in this series. One was that scene. I got fooled on that, and I got fooled on the bombs going off in the beginning. I was like, holy crap! I was like, are they really gonna like let this ride? That this is the biggest mistake that Ethan and his team have ever made. I was like, I don't know how they get past this. But then, fantastic callback to the first movie of when, Ethan says, "Did we get it?" And Luther says, "We got it." And then the walls fall down, and it's just like in the beginning of the first movie where it was just a set just to trick them to get the information they need. So we kind of tracked back to the beginning there for a moment. But back to the middle of the movie. I think it's the middle. I don't know. This is the longest Mission Impossible movie yet. But as we said in the last episode, I don't know about you, but it doesn't feel like it's 2.5 hours.
Not at all.
Yeah. The pacing does a really nice job, making it feel like a breeze. So you're not checking your watch. But yeah, so here we're at, okay, Ethan, he's in deep. How's he going to get himself out of this? And, I think Walker has given the phone back to Sloane at this point, the phone from who we thought was Lark. And it's revealed that the phone that Ethan grabbed was cracked. The phone that Walker gives to, yes, this has happened because Walker has given the phone back, but is perfectly fine. I absolutely loved how they made this story choice to, rather than doing the typical, let's seed it till the end of the movie and then boom, reveal that Walker's a bad guy. I love that they just outright are like, nope, here you go. Here's one quick thing. He's a bad guy. And so now we get to watch this unfold where we know he's the bad guy and watch how he's going to continue to play Ethan and his team while Ethan's still trying to, piece everything together. And I think that's done really, really well.
Plus that speech he gives to Sloane too. Like how many times can the government turn their back on him and he's just going to take it, when in reality he's talking about himself. And we sort of piece that together later. And, obviously we eventually get to the part where they do get Lane and they get him to this sort of warehouse bunker type place. And that's when it's revealed that they thought Lark was Ethan. And obviously by now they've sort of figured it out. So they're all just going along with it. And August is the one left in the dark. And I like how they just turn the tables on him. And it's like, okay, they were still figuring this out as we were, even though they weren't seeing what we saw as an audience. They didn't see him hand that phone to Sloane. And I think, again, it just goes back to Ethan not trusting people, especially new people who just come in and are like, well, you got to deal with me. He's like, nope, no, I don't. And
absolutely.
That scene too with Hunley, it's just done so well. And obviously
such a good performance by Alec Baldwin.
Absolutely. And obviously we end up losing him. And I really love the use of the masks again, especially in this scene where
Benji gets to wear the mask.
Yes.
Finally.
And it takes August just long enough to figure it out to where he's like, oh, crap, they know.
Yeah. It's such a good scene between the two of them. And, it's just as you mentioned, Walker, making that comment of, how long before, one man has had enough. And we learn that, clearly speaking for him, I feel like when he says the line to Lane, when he's like, why'd you have to make this so effing complicated? It's almost speaking on the classic villain trope of just like, we have a plan that we're trying to, just do what the syndicate does. But you just have you have it out for Ethan Hunt so much that you can see his frustration in why aren't we focusing on our plan? You're just trying to mess with this guy. And he's, just a tiny link in the chain. He's nothing. And then having, Benji / Lane, playing off of it, he kind of, I love that this was something that I learned on the listening to Chris McQuarrie talk about the scene, that I guess, is it Sean Harris who plays Lane?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So apparently he kind of ups his performance in this scene into almost a very like villainy, like twirling his mustache kind of way, because he's sitting there and he says, I'm Benji playing Lane in this scene. And he's like, and Benji thinks he's giving like the performance of his lifetime. And then when Walker like realizes who it is, you can see like Benji, like even though it, like Sean Harris, I feel like does a really great job, like right before the reveal, of doing a very Simon Pegg like expression on his face of just like,
absolutely,
what are you talking about? No, it's fine. And then he just rips the mask off, and then you've got Alec Baldwin right behind him with a couple more really great lines from him, where it's just like, takes the gun and it's not loaded, and he's like, oh, you were doing so well. He's like, I think this one's loaded. Do you want to find out? And I love that they lean into his excitement of being part of the team, like even to the point of him just like turning to them, being like, I see why you guys enjoy this. And then them all just being like, welcome to the team, sir, which of course adds to the heartbreak when he gets stabbed.
Why don't we jump ahead a little bit here, because obviously they end up traveling quite a ways to go after Lane after he gets away. And that happens sort of in all of the chaos and everything after that reveal.
A lot of running. Of running.
Definitely a lot of running. And
I think this is the most running he's done in the entire series.
Quite possibly. And, we'll talk about that a little more when we discuss the action scenes. But, at first we don't know if we're going to see Julia in this movie. And then we do. And she has this whole new life and everything. And I can't remember the exact location they went to, but it was sort of this remote area. And they're just Kashmir, yes. And they're helping out, this village, basically. And you can tell that this place doesn't have resources at all. So having all of the doctors there helping and, giving out vaccines and whatever else they were doing is something that was crucial. And Lane uses that to his advantage because he knows exactly where to hit Ethan where it hurts. And at this point, Walker is already helping Lane. We already know who he is. And I think that just sort of continues to build up in such a nice way to where, Ethan has everything on the line here. And I feel like while we've seen that in other movies, I feel like, Lane is a much more real threat to her, to Julia specifically.
Yeah. He's like the ultimate chess player. He's always, he's always like 20 moves ahead of Ethan, even in the fact that he was captured at the end of Rogue Nation, you would assume that he had plans that if I was captured, this is what the apostles are to do. And some of those plans clearly included Walker being the guardian angel and setting up this, giving them this massive budget to go help these people, and revealing that in that elevator sequence, which was a terrific reveal of, that's when, we knew we were going to definitely end up seeing Julia, because he puts that picture down and he's just like, you follow me, she dies. You try to warn her, she dies. Even those lines are very much a play on the Syndicate's, mission accept message in the beginning of Rogue Nation, of just, you can't stop us. We are everywhere. We are all these steps ahead of you. Don't even bother trying to save the day. just saying you've lost, and in any way that you think you can help people, they die. It's very, very impactful. And I feel like you believe that this organization definitely has all these resources and could be successful in pulling this off. They do a really nice job of making that, even though it's Mission Impossible and they're going to succeed, I feel like it also does a nice job of having a realistic feel of they've placed all the pawns in the right way and could win.
Right. Well, why don't we go ahead and talk about some action scenes? Because one of the biggest action scenes comes in those sort of final moments of the movie and everything, which we will surely talk about that. But I want to jump back to all of the running. And this is probably the most comical, I would say, that his running has been.
Yeah.
And obviously you have Benji giving him directions after Walker gets away. And he's looking at it in 2D, which is a big problem for Ethan. And, you have Benji asking him at one point, he's run into an office building and Benji's like, what are you waiting for? He's like, I'm jumping out of a window.
Yeah.
And then the whole office is just staring at him. And you can tell that he's hesitating, but it's not because he's not going to jump. He's just like, what did Benji get me into, sort of thing is how I took it. And, it's sort of like when you had Brant in Ghost Protocol and he had to jump down that giant vent basically.
Absolutely.
And hope that Benji's magnet stopped him from being impaled. So and obviously Benji is giving instructions both times, so there's a little bit of a parallel there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, there's so much running in this scene. I mean, this is even where we get the infamous scene where Tom Cruise broke his leg, and the shot is still in the movie because that's the shot they had. And that scene, it still gets me even after watching it 3 times, where the way they track the shot and have him running across the building, and then the camera's view from up as he jumps across, and you're like, all right, he made that one. And then he jumps across the next one. Oh, he made that one. But then it brings out this long pan shot. And from the trailers, everyone knows, oh, this is the shot. And every single time I've been in theaters with people, and he makes that jump, smacks into the building, everyone just goes, ooh.
Yeah.
So you have that. And, that's it. Like, that's kind of I think that's at the start of all the running in this scene. And then, it leads him all through that building, and he has to jump out through the window, and ends up going into the church, and that's absolutely hilarious too, because he's just in the middle, and he's just like, I am so sorry.
And at that point, all of the men are catching up to him too, so he just completely ruins this funeral. And it's a big funeral too.
It is.
I, at least in comparison to some of the ones that I have been to, that was a pretty large space. And
it's probably someone important.
Right. And it's obvious that all of these people are like, what is going on? What are you possibly doing here? And then all of these other men come in, and it's just like, oh, all right then.
Yeah.
You guys do your thing.
Yeah. And I love the fact that through all of this running, when they do cut to Walker, he's just walking. Like he has kind of maybe a brisk walk, but he's not rushing, because that's something that I feel like with Walker's character is he's so overly confident that that he's won. And I mean, we're introduced that so many times throughout the movie with his character. I mean, even when they make the Halo jump, and Ethan's like, we got to rethink this, there's a lightning storm and everything, and he's just like, out of my way. He's like, you afraid of a little lightning? We're gonna pull this off.
And he makes the joke at the end of that too, when Ethan obviously has to save him, and he's none the wiser by the time he hits the ground. He's like, oh, you lost your oxygen tank.
Yeah. Still so like arrogantly confident of just like, yeah, I pulled this off. Why'd you struggle? I thought you were, the super impressive Ethan Hunt that everyone talks about.
It allows him to look very calm at all times too.
Yes.
He's never panicking because he thinks he has the upper hand every single time, whereas Ethan is sort of just making things up as he goes. And we've seen that in pretty much every single one of these movies too. It is how Ethan works, and it's how he works best. And we see this even more with the helicopter scene, which is wild. But
Absolutely.
you know, to finish up on the running, Walker knows exactly where he's going. He knows there's a helicopter waiting for him. And he knows that if he just gets to his point, the other guys will distract Ethan enough to where he won't be able to catch up. And he does catch up to him technically, but because he's underneath the elevator and not in it, that poses a slight delay for him. And by the time he makes it up to the teeny tiny rooftop there, it's one of those things where, all right, well, can't really jump off of this roof because I don't have any gear to save my life if it does not work. So he sort of knows when he's been defeated, even if it's just briefly. And that never stops Ethan in this movie, which I really like. You know, Walker thinks he's gotten away with it, and Ethan knows that he might have won this battle, but not the entire thing.
Like you said, like with Walker always being so seemingly calm, that's what makes the scenes when he starts to lose it the stand out that much more. Like when he gets mad at Lane, you know, or earlier when he thinks he's talking to Lane, you know, you see he's kind of starting to lose it, almost a little unhinged of just like, I'm just trying to get this done, and you know, because of you things are going wrong. But then, you know, right after that scene when everyone thinks they've got him, you know, he's not getting away, Ethan says something of just like, no, we've got this handled, you know, these are all, I forget the line that he says, but then Walker just turns and in the most calm and smug way is just like, do you? And then just says, go. And then it's revealed the apostles are there. So it's just like he knows he's got everything, you know, each step of the way. So here he's getting away once again. And it's not until like the helicopter fight that I feel like we really see him just let loose and just be like I can't believe how insane this Ethan Hunt is. You know, he's trying to ram us and all that stuff. You know, I'm sure we'll get to that, but
we can do it now. You know, I like that you call it a helicopter fight too, because Ethan is literally fighting with the helicopter. You know, he doesn't really know how to fly one. He's kind of figuring it out as he goes. No surprise there. And everyone's sort of like, you know how to fly a helicopter? And, you know, the audience is obviously having that same reaction. It's like, wait, does he know how to fly a helicopter? Are we sure about any of this? And I think keeping the audience unsure about it is sort of what makes it so exciting. And, you know, I specifically noted that I'm not 100% convinced that Ethan should even be alive after that, because helicopter crashes usually do not end well for anyone. It, like, in reality, you know, because they're so small and just how they're built and everything. Crashing one of those is not going to bode well for anyone in a helicopter usually. And obviously this is fictional, so it's a little different.
This series, while none of them have superpowers, it does ask for quite a bit of suspension of disbelief that they just, you know, it's that movie magic, that something that someone should definitely not survive from, they can survive from it. And that's totally fine by me, because it's badass.
Right. The helicopter scene in general, though, is just an amazing scene to look at. You know, you have all of this snow, and I think it just sets a very nice background for these two helicopters. And, you know, the one that Ethan manages to finally climb into has a payload, and he wants to get rid of it, but he's smart enough to use it to his advantage. And while it doesn't completely work, it works well enough to sort of throw the other pilot off guard. And there's a moment when the pilot will not go down into the clouds where he can't see anything. And he was like, are you crazy? And at that moment I was like, well, Ethan definitely is. So it's just one of those things where Ethan is willing to go further than most other people. And that's why he's able to get the results that he gets. And he cuts it very, very close on this one. I would argue
Yeah.
that it's closer than they've ever cut it on these, but when, he's back and laid up in one of the hospital beds, even though they're not in a hospital, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Benji was sort of like, how close were we? Or
Yeah.
how close
Oh,
did
the
we cut
usual.
it? Yeah, the usual is the answer. And just the fact that that is the usual and they just take it, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think that sort of adds to just how far Ethan is willing to go to save people's lives. And none of it really has anything to do with him ever. Like, yes, he still has feelings for Julia, and we see that she has remarried now and has this great life that she honestly enjoys. And she understands why her and Ethan can't be together anymore. They both do. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of what makes Ethan's budding relationship with Ilsa more interesting, because like I said before in the Rogue Nation episode, she understands everything that he goes through because she does the same kind of work. And it's almost like for those people, if someone isn't in the same line of work, the other person will just never get it completely. And Julia understands it enough to, understand that they need to move forward.
Yeah. I really like that they closed out her story. And it's just she's happy. It's not, oh, we can't be together because you have to be off doing your thing. It's like, no, she's getting to be out there and helping people, and she gets to do it with the love of her life. It's a really nice moment when he just asks her, you're happy, and she says, absolutely. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. And her husband's great as well. It's when he says, Sloan arrived, shortly after you left, right in front of half the Indian army, and still calling him doc, and it's like, clearly he's like, I know you're definitely not a doctor, but
Right.
we'll let that keep going. And I really enjoyed wrapping her story up, and just the whole team being together, and just kind of like, well, it's another day in the life, and on to the next mission, I guess.
Hopefully. We'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. So apparently Christopher McQuarrie's editor, like, throughout the entire time, like, he's working on the movie, and he's just like, you have to come back, right? He's like, you didn't kill Lane. He's like, you've made a trilogy. You have to come back and make the other. And McQuarrie's just like, shut up. Like, he's like, I need a nap before I can ever even consider coming back to do another one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't blame him. There's so much that was accomplished in this movie on such a grand and amazing scale. Even after we have this insane helicopter fight, but then that's not even over. When they crash, Walker gets his face all burned, and then they have this intense fight on top of a mountain. And when I thought that a massively brutal death in the Mission Impossible series, when you look at Mission Impossible 3, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character just gets, like, clearly had to have been beheaded by the car when it runs him over. And I thought that was bad. And then Walker gets the helicopter hooked to the face and pulled down. I was impressed that made it into the PG-13 cut. And apparently McQuarrie was surprised as well. He thought that they were definitely going to ask them to change that, but then when they showed it to the MPAA, they were like, no, it's fine, you're good, and they were just like, yes.
He looks a little like Two-Face too after he gets burned.
Does.
I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if that was purposeful or it just happened that way, because even his hair, it almost felt like a Harvey Dent style. And I was like, that's a nice touch, even if it wasn't intended. But I think for the most part we've touched on at least some of our favorite scenes here, but I do have at least one that I want to add, and that's when we have one of the car chases, but Ethan is on the motorcycle, and he's doing this without a helmet, which is perfectly legal in many places. That's something that I saw when I was on the East Coast. I was like, no one has to wear a helmet? That's so strange. But, even in Europe, I'm sure various countries have different laws on that. But he is going so fast, and he goes to cut across a street, and this car just comes and lays him out on the ground because he just rides right into it. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, wow, yeah. And he just gets up and keeps going. I was like, yep, typical Ethan. So, that was just a nice little moment in the midst of an action scene to sort of change pace, because to go from being on a motorcycle to being thrown across a car and then being on foot, it's like, okay, all right, here we go. Things are getting interesting here. But
Yeah.
other than that, obviously, some of the big scenes, like the helicopter scene and even just the end with Julia helping Luther, I really liked that moment
great
too.
scene.
That was a
Great
great
scene.
moment.
Yeah. That was I definitely really enjoyed their scene together, because it's you learn earlier that she's become a ghost, and that Luther has a sense of pride, is like, she's good at it, I trained her myself. And so that they have this extra special relationship between the two of them,
Right.
and so to see the two of them work together, and Benji saying over the thing, what are you doing letting her help, tell her to get out of there. And Luther's just like, where's she gonna go? She's stuck here with the rest of us. She wants to help.
Right.
She's not in the movie a lot, but she kills it. Like, even just with the, she has a couple little quips, and then you hear Ilsa on the other side, of the comms, just being like, ooh, I like her.
Right. And I think that's a very subtle but very nice moment between the two of them too, because obviously they both have feelings for Ethan, but it's not in a competitive sort of way.
Yeah.
Ilsa understands that Ethan will sort of always have these feelings for Julia no matter what, and Julia is very understanding of the situation, whereas most people would be freaking out. She's just like, okay, let me help, what can I do? And Luther kind of just gives her this look, and he knows she's not going away. She has a little something similar to what Ethan has in him. She's not quite as stubborn, but she is ready to risk her life to save all of these people that she just spent so much time helping. And I think that really goes to speak to her character in general, even though we don't see, like you said, a lot of her in this. It's just what we get of her character is so strong that we don't need her in more of the movie to show that. But do you have any other favorite moments from this that we didn't touch on just yet?
Oh boy.
Tough question, I know.
It is. And it's like, we've talked about so much Mission Impossible that it's like blending together in a good way.
I don't think we've screwed up anything, though, with the two movies since we are recording these back to back. I was really worried that I would do that, especially since I didn't get to take too many notes on Fallout. I was like, wait, am I going to remember what happens at all?
Yeah, I'm sure someone listening, and probably after we wrap, I'll end up being like, oh, why didn't we talk about that? But I feel like we covered really mostly everything. I mean, I'm sure there's little scenes here and there.
Real quick, the scene where Ilsa saves Benji is a really nice moment.
Yes.
That's something where we see her going up against Lane, and she has to choose between killing Lane and saving Benji. And I think because of the time she has spent with Ethan, she makes the choice to save that one life.
Absolutely. And I think that's something cool in this movie is you have, Lane. I mean, you could argue that Walker is probably the more big bad in this movie than Lane is, but
right.
Lane is, the head of everything. He's the big bad, in a typical action movie, you would expect the protagonist and the star. You would expect Tom Cruise is going to have a big major fight and finally take down the guy that is the cause for all of this stuff. But the thing that this movie does so smart is that Lane, I feel like, is way more Ilsa's big bad.
Yes,
it's
absolutely
everything that she was forced to go through with him in Rogue Nation. She's being told by MI6 that in order to fully be reinstated, her testament to them is that she has to kill Lane.
Right. That's how she shows her loyalty to them.
Yeah. And it's like, even though that's a mission, you can also tell that there's a personal aspect of she wants to see him dead as well. And then, like you said, sparing the life, so that, she can save Benji, is a great moment. And that the whole sequence is great, having the two of them paired off, and then you have Luther and Julia, and then Ethan is off completely on his own and can't even communicate with everyone. And you kind of see some desperation even in him of, when he's like talking to himself, and he's just, when his helicopter's on fire, and he's just like, come on. He's like, not now, not when I'm this close.
Right.
He doesn't have he usually has someone on the other line to talk to. And here he is, just doesn't want to let everyone down. So that whole sequence is put together so well. And then you had mentioned with the motorcycle scene, a fun fact with that is, so he's absolutely, in typical Tom Cruise fashion, he's riding around on that motorcycle without a helmet. But he was supposed to have, because I guess the area that he was going to be riding is a lot of like cobblestone, and it's wet, and I guess not very good conditions for that motorcycle to ride at those speeds, on. And so I guess they had this whole thing planned in pre-production. They had this piece of equipment that was going to make all of that, safer. And on the day of, it failed. And Macquarie says to Tom, he's like, this, this isn't working. What are we going to do? And Tom Cruise says, well, we got to roll. And he hops on the motorcycle and drives off. And, it's the dedication of, that piece of safety equipment isn't working, but we got to get the shot. So let's get it. And so they reworked the scene and, did all those crazy stunts of him driving around. And then him crashing into the car, I think he's attached onto some type of rig that, he crashes into the car, but it like pulls him off of it, just in time. But it's just more examples of great practical effects.
Right.
But I love, in addition to you saying how there was that great, kind of break in that action where he crashes and then he kind of gets up and keeps going. I love the resolve of that scene where, he just runs and dives into the bushes. And from an audience perspective, you're just kind of like, seriously? Like, that's where, and then it's revealed that he just cut through this netting, landed in the boat, and there's Benji and Luther and the masked Lane just laying there. And just that great, casual Mission Impossible little like score with the snare drum starts playing, and they're just on to the next thing.
The cops look so baffled too, which is great.
Oh yeah,
they're like,
I love it.
What?
Yeah.
Why would he go down there, sort of thing?
Yeah.
And obviously they have no way of knowing that Luther and Benji were down there with the boat. But for us, you're like, oh, okay, we know exactly what's about to happen now that we saw that the thing was cut and everything. But I think there are so many moments in this movie that you can sort of pluck out and pick apart, and I mean that in a good way. I absolutely really enjoyed this movie, and it's been hard for me to sort of figure out which is my favorite now, because I've liked 4, 5, and 6 quite a bit, and I sort of like how, like you said previously, they sort of tie together in a way that the first 3 didn't. And it's just one of those things where it depends on who you have working on the movies too. Brad Bird did an excellent job with the action scenes. Then Christopher McQuarrie came in and did the same thing. It's almost a little hard to tell that there's 2 different directors for these 3 movies, in my opinion, at least. I did see some sort of Incredibles likenings in the one that Brad Bird did, just because he does such a great job with action, both in live action films and in animation. It's like, okay, this is someone who understands the importance of good action scenes, and you can feel that in obviously, like I said, the Incredibles movies as well. So it's just really nice to sort of have that continuity, even though not every single character carries over in all three movies. I think it's just enough to where you're like, okay, this isn't a trilogy, but it feels like a great continuation.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And that's, I mean, I'll always have a soft place in my heart for the first film. You know, that's the one that really, as a kid, you know, even though as a kid the ending never made sense to me until I was older. I watched that movie so much, and I fell in love with the series through that movie, and I have such great memories on it. And then I remember having a ton of fun, you know, with the second one, even though I recognized that this is, you know, kind of inferior to the first one. And then
Right.
it was a while before the third, but I remember seeing the third one and just being like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome. And we like dove into some of like Ethan's personal life, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. So, you know, such a really good villain. And then Ghost Protocol was this whole other next level of action and humor and just flow to the series, and you know, really felt like the culmination of what they wanted to strive for. You know, pieces of 1, 2, and 3 all fitting into Ghost Protocol to come together, to be the really just such a great tone for the series going forward. And then it was great to see, you know, Chris McQuarrie take that and honor that, but also put his own little stamp on it and add some more to the story and the team. And then obviously this one. I mean, I'm right there with you. I don't know if right now I could say which one's my favorite.
Yeah.
I've definitely had rankings and they fluctuate a lot. But Fallout is definitely up there. Ghost Protocol. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, I am horrible at ranking things, yet I somehow keep volunteering myself to do things
I
like that,
know.
especially with some of the websites I write for. I'm like, why do I do this to myself? I hate ranking things. So who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe one day you and I will rank these movies. And, you know, for a quick final thought here, they wrapped this one up in such a way to where it would be totally satisfying if they didn't do another one, which I
Yes.
know obviously people would want another one, but they wrapped it up in a way where it's like, okay, this could be sort of a perfectly fine ending. And if they want to do another one, great. If they don't, it's not like we're really missing a piece of the puzzle. So,
Right.
other than
It.
Lane being alive, I mean, but
Yeah.
that's sort of something that isn't one of those things where they seem too worried about right now, because they've pretty much dismantled everything he wanted to accomplish. And
Yeah.
you can see the look on his face. And, you know, for all we know, when Sloane came in, they were able to somehow figure out where Lane was. I don't know. Because, you know, Ilsa and Lane have this pretty big fight, and she gives him a really big gash on his leg, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know how far he would make it.
So he actually, it when they're in that scene and Sloane gets like a little voiceover that kind of wraps a lot of things up,
Okay. Yeah.
and she ends up revealing that, you know, as a per Ethan's request, Lane gets returned to MI6, and then she says through a broker, of course.
Oh, right. Yeah, that sort of scene after the end there.
Yeah, so we get that little tease with the, you know, there's the White Widow again, and so it definitely, like, the way it wraps up, I completely agree with you.
Because he didn't escape. I think that's
Yeah,
sort of what I was
yeah,
getting at. You know, it's not like he's running free. So it's just one of those things where, you know, he's alive technically at the end of the movie, but who knows for how much longer.
absolutely. Like, it definitely, if it everything feels resolved, even if it's that slight left open. You know, it's that slight left open of, yeah, we could do more, but I completely agree with you. Like, it resolves everything just enough that, you know, even the way the last moment that we have, it has this, you know, fitting end of just, you know, how close to become the usual. And, she also makes a joke and Ethan just, starts laughing, and he clearly in all this pain from the massive amounts of ridiculous situations he gets himself into. And he says, "Don't make me laugh." And then it cuts to black, and, it is kind of a fitting end to it. That is just like, this is what they do, and they're the team, and they're always going to be together. But having said that, I will be very upset if there's not another one.
I totally understand that. It's one of those things where, because I have watched these so close together, and, like I had mentioned, I had watched the third one before, and bits and pieces of it were coming back to me as I was rewatching it because it was so long ago. I feel like, with Fallout being the one that's still in theaters as we're speaking, I don't know if it necessarily will be by the time everyone is listening to this. So
Quick,
hopefully you've
Tom
all
Cruise
gone
run to
to
go
see it.
see it.
Yes, and I think, right now it's a satisfying ending for, this being the sixth one in theaters. And obviously with Tom Cruise getting older, not younger, it's going to be one of those things where if he can keep doing them and they can keep making as much money as they've been making, there's not really a reason for them to stop making them. It's sort of like the Fast and the Furious movies, which are not as good of quality, in my opinion, as this franchise is, because there have been, 8, 9 Fast and the Furious movies? I don't know. It's a higher number than the 6 Mission Impossible movies. But I think, this movie franchise has done something that the show was never able to do. And even though I didn't even know it was based on a show, so I think that kind of proves my point right there. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see if there is going to be a 7th one. I'm sure if there is going to be one, they might announce it relatively soon. Maybe, I would imagine, next year. I guess that's not really like soon, but it's close enough.
Yeah, I do think if they are going to do another one, they're certainly not going to wait very long, because, he is getting older.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely would love to see at least one more. I also wouldn't mind, if after one more, although at the same time I'm thinking like if they did more than the next one, maybe Ethan becomes the guy who gives the missions, and you
right.
And
he
you
can
take
be the secretary.
Yeah, and you can take the series in maybe a different style, and maybe the series isn't as high action, maybe it is more espionage. I don't know, but at the same time, I don't know if that's what audiences would like. That might not be the direction that people see Mission Impossible as anymore.
I mean, they're still making James Bond movies, so I wouldn't say that
that's true.
Anything is impossible at this point, and that seems to be their motto. Nothing is impossible.
Yeah, yeah, the Impossible Mission Force. My one friend Johnny, when he and I did a rewatch of the movies, and I think it was in Rogue Nation when they said Impossible Mission Force like a few times, and he was just kind of like, he's like, I get that that's what it stood for in the 60s TV show. He's like, but I feel like, for the movies, maybe they should have changed it. I'm like, no, they can't change it. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, but they poke fun at the ridiculous things about the Impossible Mission Force in all the best ways in these movies. And they do it in such cheeky ways that you just accept it. You don't sit there and say, oh, that's cheesy. You're just like, right. Yes, the Impossible Mission Force is awesome. And so is this series.
Well, if there is a 7th movie, we will obviously be discussing that at some point down the line. Hopefully this podcast is still going when that happens. We'll see. Maybe we'll have to do like a bonus episode if the news comes out or something like that. But yes. Tim, thank you so much for coming on to talk about all 6 of these movies, and in such a short time period. I think this is the most I have had a single guest on in a 2-month period, I think, is when we have covered all of these. But
I know, I'm sure your listeners are getting very sick of me, so I will give you guys a break.
They'll have a lot of Harry Potter episodes to listen to soon.
So you trade in some Tom Cruise running for some magic. I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of the same.
Sometimes it feels that way, but again, thank you so much, Tim, and to our listeners, I hope you've all enjoyed us covering this series, and as always, thank you all for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.